And our heart beats like a drum. Feel the fire of the sun. Let our voices become one. Feel the rhythm of Africa. 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 Feel the rhythm of Africa.
Hello and welcome to African Essence. I'm your host, Leanne Jacobs, and today we're talking about addiction. At least 30% of South Africans have some form of drug-related problems. Substance abuse is an enormous social problem in our country, and it's increasing on a daily basis. Alcohol, marijuana, tech, cocaine, heroin are but some of the substances that are frequently used in this country. With such frightening statistics, there's an urgent need to constantly create an awareness and to educate people about the dangers and treatments that are available, and also to provide families with more options. Let's take a closer look. Drug abuse, especially over an extended period, can have numerous health effects. Chronic drug use can alter a person's brain structure and function, resulting in long-term psychological effects such as depression, anxiety, panic disorders, increased aggression, paranoia, and hallucinations. Long-term drug use can also affect a person's memory, learning, and concentration. The long-term physical effects of drug use vary depending on the type of drug and the duration of use. However, experts have linked chronic drug use with the following health conditions: cardiovascular disease, respiratory problems, kidney damage, liver disease, and there's also the risk of overdose.
ARCA Durban provides an exclusive rehab treatment for alcoholism and drug addiction. The only rehab in South Africa that offers a medical detox treatment. We offer a superior, evidence-based and medically cutting-edge approach to the treatment of addiction. If you have been frustrated by repeated failures at rehab recovery or are unaware that there are proven anti-craving medications that can significantly improve treatment outcomes, give us a confidential call to learn more about ARCA Durban's rehab program. Contact ARCA Durban on 078-2722-911 24 hours or call our office number 031-261-5515 and our Johannesburg number on 0622-770-911. Office number 011-656-0705.
They are recovery-orientated sanctuaries anchored in the heart of communities which support multiple pathways, provide hope, and promote wellness, but not everyone chooses the option of rehabilitation. However, there is still hope if your loved one or someone you care about needs urgent intervention. Involuntary commitment, or a Section 33, is a law that is currently held in South Africa that allows a qualified person to request a court order requiring someone to be committed and treated involuntarily for an alcohol or substance use disorder. This is known as Section 33, or more specifically, Section 33(1)(a)(b)(c) of Act 70, 2008, the Prevention of and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act. Today, I am at the Assisted Rehabilitation Center of Africa, and joining me is the director, Dr. Naidoo. Doc, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you on our show.
It's a pleasure to be on your show, Leah.
Now, Doc, since the last time we were here, we went into lockdown level 4 and now back again to lockdown level 3. Did you see maybe an increase in terms of your stats when it comes to your patients?
Lee, you know that we are living in strange times now. And the restrictions of level 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are absolutely necessary for the community. But it's not necessarily beneficial to the substance abuser, because you find that with the restrictions, the social isolation, the difficulties that go with the restrictions, and the stresses that come with the COVID-19 pandemic. That means the loss of life, the loss of earnings. It tends to exacerbate the substance abuse problem. They add to the triggers of substance abuse. So yes, to answer your question, there's been a sharp rise in the amount of people seeking treatment. But unfortunately, there's been a decrease in the facilities available to treat due to the COVID-19 restrictions.
I see. That must have been very difficult, I would assume, for some of the facilities out there. And today we are back here. We want to talk about voluntary and involuntary admissions. We are going to be talking to some of the guests that are here with us. But I'd like to know, in your case here at ARCA, have you had cases of involuntary admissions? And what are some of the struggles that you've had with those?
You know, what we've been doing traditionally at ARCA and many rehab centers is that we've been focusing on the needs of the substance abuser. And we've been only taking voluntary. You know, often I've told patients that I can do a lot for you, but I have to do it with you. But little have we focused on those who are not willing for treatment and the families that have been suffering for years upon years. Okay. The patient may be doing the using of the drugs, but often it is the families and the community that suffers. So what we're going to discuss today, hopefully, is that how do we go about helping the families or the loved ones of people who are not yet ready for treatment? Will they ever be ready? Will this disease go away on its own? And the answer to that is possibly no. And what options are available to the families to get treatment for their loved ones earlier with better outcomes rather than later?
Yes. And for those that, I know you're saying you would rather, or you have been working with those that are more volunteering to get the treatment, but what about those that are more resistant to it? Does it not cause some sort of danger to them if they're refusing the treatment?
Of course. Most certainly so. The natural cause of the disease is downhill. The longer it's left untreated, the more extreme are the consequences. Okay, and this is what it is. Going ahead, trying to get the law involved or the criminal justice system involved prior to the crimes being committed is going to be important in this respect.
Now, Doc, from your experience, what do you think is some of the maybe psychological treatment that is needed to get a person to actually volunteer or to commit to such a type of treatment?
Well, you see, if a patient is admitted on an involuntary basis, okay, they've got to understand that this is not punishment. This is therapeutic medical intervention. And to begin the process, as I always say, it's no different from one who commits voluntarily. We've got to have a detoxification phase for them. Then we've got to do the psychosocial phase. And the psychosocial phase is important to release them from a kind of hijacked brain, a brain that's been hijacked by drugs or alcohol. So the common term that we use for that is a psychologist and the social workers helps the patient to rewire their brain. Because substance abuse is all-powerful and it affects the thought processes of the patient. So medical, psychological, sociological, and in fact spiritual also are important aspects. So there's no difference in the treatment process. It's just that the voluntary user comes forward for help. Probably he has suffered enough, he comes forward for help. The involuntary user has got to be kind of coaxed or gently coaxed by the law to subject themselves to medical treatment, not punishment.
Well, Doc, thank you so much for allowing us to come through and sharing on the show with us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Coming up next, we chat to Gail Grayling from the National Prosecuting Authority, and she lets us know more about the law dealing with involuntary actions.
Hey, hey.
Joining me now is Gail Grayling, a member of the National Prosecuting Authority. Gail, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Gail, what would you say is the attitude of the law regarding an addict?
At the moment, the law recognizes the absolutely devastating effect that drug addiction has not only on families, not only the community at large, but we're looking at the effect on the economy, on people who are not even directly involved in drug use. We're looking at taxpayers. So the government and the law has acknowledged that this is something that needs legal action to intervene and actually do something about this problem that is devastating this country.
What are some of the laws that are available out there that can actually assist people with substance abuse problems?
The law allows for a very complex, multidisciplinary approach towards drug addiction, and that approach is aimed at early intervention, harm reduction, and demand reduction. There has been a significant change in the mores of the law from the traditional approach to the modern day approach, and that is as a result of international pressure and local pressure on our lawmakers. This mores change is defined firstly by the fact that in the past, addiction recovery or recovery centres like ARCA were only available to people who wanted to get better. In fact, it was a prerequisite to entry into any rehabilitation centre, and the public perception was that for anyone to be able to get better from the scourge of addiction, they had to want to get better. Nowadays, and the topic that we're talking about today, which is involuntary admission, the law acknowledges that there is help even for those people who don't want to get better. I'm sure the doctor will elaborate on it, but we need to remember that those who are so far gone that they cannot even conceptualize the fact that they need help, those are the people that we really need to reach out to. Those are the families. We need to give them hope, and that is the current attitude of the law towards rehabilitation.
Okay, let's talk about, because it's the family members now that are actually going to come forward and say, okay, I have someone that needs help. Let's talk about that. How does one go about obtaining a court order? There is a process that everybody has to go through. Explain that process to us.
Okay, firstly, there is the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act. That is what governs the process when it comes to involuntary admission. That is your person who doesn't want to get better. His family has maybe sent him to a rehabilitation centre 20 times, and each time he keeps relapsing. Okay, so the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act, that allows for a family member or a concerned member of a community to come to a local magistrate's court where there is a prosecutor. So they will approach me with an affidavit from that family member. And in that affidavit, they have to allege certain prerequisites. That is that the person is firstly a danger to himself and possibly a danger to other people, that he is causing harm to himself and to other people, or constitutes a public health risk. Okay. The third one, which is he or she will be committing criminal offences. I also need a social worker's report. That can be either a private social worker's report or a government social worker's report. So once all those requirements have been satisfied, I can then have a summons issued, which will call upon that person to appear before the court, before a magistrate, before me, where an inquiry will be conducted into whether that person is a person as contemplated by the Act and whether that person will be suitable for involuntary admission.
Now, when I'm listening to the process, it can sound like it could take quite a bit of time. For viewers and for family members out there, it could look like a tedious process. What is the timeline for this process?
Us as court officials, we acknowledge that when a person is so badly addicted that it would justify actually giving a court order to involuntarily commit someone to a centre, that time is of the essence. If we wait a day, that person could be overdosing on the street and die. So we do understand how imperative it is to act quickly. If someone comes to me as a prosecutor in a magistrate's court with an affidavit alleging those different factors and a social worker's report, I can almost immediately issue a summons. Okay? That summons will then go to a police officer who will go serve it on the addicted person. That summons will call upon that person to appear in court, mostly within 14 days after service of the summons. Okay? Once that person appears in court, an inquiry will be conducted, both from the magistrate and myself, as to whether that person is a person contemplated by the Act and which is suitable for involuntary admission.
Okay, so from the time, so I want the viewers to get more or less the timeline from when it's actually brought to you. The timeline we're looking at is within maybe 2 weeks, where they can actually get their loved one to a facility for proper treatment.
So generally we're looking at about 2 weeks, because that is the amount of days required for the service of a summons. It is dictated by the rules of court. Okay. However, saying that, if we have a really bad case where this person is in imminent danger of dying, it is possible to almost immediately bring that person to court. If certain of those requirements are satisfied, and if I am satisfied that this is a case that warrants issuing an immediate warrant of arrest for that person, it can be done. But what I must stress is that we need to reserve those cases for the cases where truly a person's life is at stake. I mean, that's not to say that with all addiction problems, their lives are at stake, but we're really talking about imminent harm to a person. So it is possible to get immediate help, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the viewers out there would appreciate this kind of information. But what I want to know next is, why only now is this as an option available?
I think it is important to know that this sort of legislation has basically always been available. The newest formulation of the Act governing these issues was formulated in 2008, okay? But prior to that, there was another Act. So yes, it has always been available. What makes it different now is that we have had a lot of international pressure on South Africa to move our law in line with what is happening internationally. We're talking about United Nations and World Health Organization instruments which have been ratified by South Africa, and therefore we are nationally obligated to implement those responsibilities. Internationally, we're looking at a Morris change, okay? They are acknowledging that addiction is not so much a moral failure, but it is actually a disease that needs to be treated and understood just as, for example, cancer would be understood, okay? And it is for that reason that we have had this, let's just say, an indiscriminatory approach towards addiction. We are now allowing for help for people who don't want to be helped. In the past, there were issues with, let's only help the person if he's still young. Let's only help the person if he's never been convicted of a criminal offense. That is a grossly discriminatory approach, and taking into account that we're a modern constitutional democracy, that sort of approach is unlawful. So those are some of the changes that have come about as a result of our international obligations. Not only that, there is a lot of national pressure that is from communities, from taxpayers, from the public, from families, from the public at large. The law or the legal fraternity have been put under pressure to use the law for good, to use the law to help people. Okay? We're moving away from the traditional persecutory approach to using the law for something good. Okay? Another aspect how that is played out or manifested is, for example, if we have a criminal case, instead of a traditional sentencing approach where a person might be sent to incarceration in a particular prison, we are now looking at, in lieu of or in addition to the normal sentencing processes, to committing someone also involuntarily to a rehabilitation centre. And that is because the international world acknowledges that prison is not the right place for drug addicts. That is not where they are going to get the help.
Okay, Gail, explain to me, are there any implications when it comes to somebody that's going to go via a court order now into treatment and they have committed criminal offences?
I think at this point it's important to distinguish between two different scenarios. The scenario that we were talking about now is called civil commitment. We are dealing with Section 33 of the Act, which I referred to earlier. Okay, that is a civil process. It is not a criminal process. A summons is issued and that person appears in court on a summons, the inquiry is conducted and an order is granted committing the person to a treatment centre. If he absconds from that treatment centre, that person can be charged with contempt of court, which is a criminal matter. A criminal case will be opened, a warrant of arrest will be issued for that person and he will be brought to court for that. There is a possibility of imprisonment or massive fine, and yes, that will result in a conviction. The second scenario, which I must distinguish from the first one, this is where we already have a pre-existing criminal matter. That is, the person has been arrested for theft, for assault, for housebreaking, or any similar offence. For those sort of matters, we can, in addition or in lieu of a traditional sentencing modes, we can send that person involuntary to a treatment centre. Now, when I specified in lieu or in addition to, for example, we can give a person direct imprisonment on condition that they go to a rehabilitation centre. That would mean, therefore, that if they abscond from the treatment centre, firstly, that direct imprisonment will come into play. It will have the same effect as a suspended sentence. And secondly, in addition to that housebreaking, theft, whatever it may be, contempt of court will also be added to that. So that person will now be facing an additional charge. So there are severe consequences when we're talking about someone who actually doesn't appreciate what we are trying to do for them.
Finally, what we'd like to know is, when it comes to the funding, who funds this entire process?
I can only answer that question insofar as my part of it goes. I'm a public prosecutor. My salary is paid by the government. This is part of my duties. Okay, my duties as dictated by the law. When you come to me for help, I'm helping you because firstly, it's my job. And secondly, because I studied law because I want to help people. I want to give people hope. Okay? So if you didn't study law because it's the right thing to do, at least do it because it is your job. Okay? The other aspects of it, later I believe you'll be interviewing Donovan de Klerk from ARCA Recovery Centre, and you've had the good Dr. Naidoo speaking to you as well. Those costs associated with the rehabilitation centres, I think it would be appropriate that they would have addressed you on those. What I will stress though is that there are government services available. However, because the government services are so overwhelmed with people, you are going to be looking at a long waiting time. Unfortunately, we do have government facilities available, we do have government social workers, but in the time that it can take to actually meaningfully involve those people, it might be too late. And it is respectfully my personal opinion that we need to, in the future, look at an approach where government institutions, that is the National Prosecuting Authority, the Department of Justice, formulates a close relationship with private institutions that are willing to help. In fact, part of my duty when it comes to these sort of matters is to facilitate the provision of these sort of services. And that doesn't matter if it's government, and it doesn't matter if it's private.
Yeah, I think if the main element or the goal is to save a life, I think any two working forces can come together if that ultimately is the goal.
Yes, certainly.
Gail, thank you so much for coming through and joining us on the show and really educating us on the law in terms of voluntary and involuntary admissions.
Thank
you
you
so much.
ARCA Durban provides an exclusive rehab treatment for alcoholism and drug addiction. The only rehab in South Africa that offers a medical detox treatment. We offer a superior, evidence-based and medically cutting-edge approach to the treatment of addiction. If you have been frustrated by repeated failures at rehab recovery or are unaware that there are proven anti-craving medications that can significantly improve treatment outcomes, give us a confidential call to learn more about ARCA Durban's rehab program. Contact ARCA Durban on 07827229111 24 hours or call our office number 031-261-5515 and our Johannesburg number on 0622770911. Office number 011-656-0705.
All right, so I realized last year sometime that Chris definitely had a problem. It was in her behavior a lot. That the main part was from the behavior. That's what prompted me to pay more attention to Chris and in her words and in her behavior. So that's when I definitely realized that Chris has a problem. The more difficult part was that I didn't feel comfortable approaching Chris with this directly. So I did from time to time raise the topic, but very subtly. Because at that point, the truth is that Chris was very angry and she was very tempered. So I didn't want to make the situation worse, or any day that was going by worse. I was really trying to contain it, but in the same breath, also trying to find the solution. So it wasn't a situation where we had a conversation. Chris, I know what you are doing. It certainly wasn't like that, because at that point
I wouldn't even give the opportunity.
Chris would not have even admitted it at that time. So it was very difficult to have this conversation. So like I said, I would do it very subtle ways in a manner within which I was trying to avoid a bad day from getting to a very bad day, if I may say it like that.
I think it was the defensiveness that made people around me nervous, so they couldn't really approach me with regards to that.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I got advice from several people, because I would go from one person to the next, because a person would refer me to another person if you're not able to help me fully. So I ended up speaking to many people and many facilities to find out about how does this process work. Okay, how does the process work, and how certain are you that my daughter's going to be getting the help that she needs? So they needed to convince me that this isn't just a quick fix, because I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for a short fix, and that would defeat the entire purpose. I was really looking for a facility that would be able to help long term.
To get to the problems that's in your heart and your soul, because that's where it stems from. Look, I think addiction's ugly, first of all. You know you need help. You sit there and you get high, and then you pray to God. You tell God, I need help. I need to stop doing this. Sorry. You tell God, I need to stop doing this. Please help me. And you know you need the help, but you're in so much denial that you just go back to you just get more high. You carry on getting high, even though you know you need to stop it eats you up. The hardest part for me was to face myself after that, to face all the bad decisions that I made, to face all the people that I've hurt, to make amends. And I wasn't willing to do that. Cocaine. It was cocaine and alcohol. Alcohol is actually it's I would see it as a gateway drug to harder substances. So yeah. Look, I'm gonna be honest here and say my mom couldn't even come and tell me because my behavior was so erratic that people were scared to approach me, and I don't blame my mom for not coming and telling me that this is what she needs to do. I was actually caught very off guard. Donovan from Tetelesta pitched up at my house and he told me that, listen, we've got a court order and you need to go to rehab, and I lied to them. I told them, listen, I don't need to go, you don't know what you're doing, I don't have any problems. It ended up being a bit of the process to getting me there was not pretty. I did fight a lot.
That the biggest challenge for me was getting Chris into a facility. That's where it started. But when I found Donovan, he was my saving grace. Absolute gift from God. I really mean that. Because I had failed with so many people, so many places, so many facilities, and time was also lapsing, which was a very important thing. Because every week that went by, I'm a mom. I'm going to worry about my daughter, and the fact that every week that goes by, things get worse. Addiction, that from my knowledge, that's how addiction works. Every day, every week, every month that goes by. So that was also a very important thing for me to try and find a place within the space of time. So like I said, when I found Donovan, and he said to me very quickly, there is a solution. It's a court order. Like I said, it was one of the best days of my life. Because now I had hope. It was, the sun was shining for me, really. Because I could now save my daughter from all of this bad things. Look, it is such a moment, I can't explain it to you, because I failed for so long, and here was this day, here was this human being that I just met who said to me, yes, I can help you, we can get a court order. Some of the best words I've heard in my life.
Once I realized the reason I was doing this, why I need to do this, it's I wouldn't say it's smooth sailing from there, but it is sort of like that. Yeah.
I'm a super proud mom today.
I think we've got to give all thanks and glory though to Tetelesta Recovery Centre.
I absolutely agree. These people are God sent.
It wouldn't have been possible. They teach you so much about God. It's all thanks to them, to God, to my mom, for making any of these changes possible today.
Joining me now is Donovan de Klerk, the Director of Tetelesta Recovery Centre. Donovan, welcome to African Essense.
Thank you so much for having us, Leah.
Firstly, Donovan, tell us, what is it that you do at the Tetelesta Recovery Centre?
So I'm the Managing Director. I make sure that everything is running according to plan. Obviously, we deal with families, we deal with the people on the program. We're always looking for avenues to help people. So it's a comprehensive approach in terms of what I'm doing. It's not just one thing. There's counseling, there's family group counseling, handling inquiries. I think a lot of what I do as well is giving information. I think one of the problems that we have is that people don't necessarily always know what the problem is, and they also don't know where to go and look for the answers. So a lot of what I'm doing is just directing people to say, okay, this is the problem and this is the solution.
Okay, now we're talking about involuntary methods of getting help. And what I want to know is, getting treatment through a court order, would it be considered as a punishment or maybe just a therapeutic intervention?
So the short answer is definitely a therapeutic solution. A longer answer would first and foremost, me commending the law at this point in time. I think a lot of South Africans have lost confidence in our legal system in certain aspects, in certain areas. The one thing I think the law has done right, especially in this act, the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse Act 70 of 2008, I think is that they've genuinely come up with a solution to help people. This is not one of those aspects of the law where the end result is jail. The end result in this aspect is a restored family, someone that's genuinely had an opportunity to help themselves come to a place of recovery. So in this instance, I think the law has genuinely come to the party in terms of assisting the citizens of the country, assisting mothers that struggle, assisting the addicted that have a problem. So definitely a therapeutic solution.
It sounds a lot more positive when it comes to actually getting help from sources out there. Now tell us, what can be expected when it comes to the outcome as a result when a person does finally commit or embrace this form of treatment?
Sure. The first thing that I have to say is that everyone has hopes that their loved one would come to a place of recovery and never have to go back to drugs or alcohol, whatever it is that they're struggling with. So that is the natural expected outcome that people would want. In most cases, that is possible. Unfortunately, the person involved is at the end of the day the root cause for the problems to begin with, because they're making decisions that might not necessarily be conducive of recovery. They go to old places, join themselves back to old friends, do old things, fall into old habits. So an expected outcome for me would definitely be that first and foremost the person gets into treatment, whether they really understand that they have a problem or not. That's the first step in finally getting that person to understand that what they are doing is not just causing harm to themselves, but also harm to their loved ones and family members. And by definition, society. So society can benefit, families are going to benefit, the person themselves are going to benefit.
I see. And what is the procedure now when a family member obtains the court order and brings their family member to be admitted at your recovery center? What is the procedure from there on?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that a family needs to do is to obviously get in touch with the recovery center and then obviously tell them the circumstances and the situation. What would be required initially is 2 affidavits from a family member, and they need to specifically state that the person is a danger to themselves and to society. Okay, and then you have to list the reasons why you are saying that, with the emphasis on the person's addiction problem. So the person is drinking too much, they're stealing, they're not going to work, the person is taking drugs, they're committing crime, they're not stealing when they're getting money. These are the things that you'll have to list in your affidavit. A social worker will have to compile a report based on these affidavits and based on the person's background, history, childhood, upbringing. There's a lot of things that are going into this. So those are the 2 things that will need to be submitted to court, and then the court process will start. I believe you spoke to Gail this morning. Gail will be then obviously in a position where she'll assess the application in front of her, and they will then issue a summons. That summons will then be issued, and that person will be served with that summons to appear at court on a specific day, and that's how the court process will start. Yeah.
Okay, now that's the court process. That's how do you obtain the court order. What we're asking is, from rehab, once we've brought the person to rehab, what is the procedure thereafter?
So at the center, obviously after a person has been officially put on a court order, we do have a responsibility to the court. So we would have to give report back to the court in terms of the person's progress, make sure that the court are aware of the person's progress at the treatment process. Are they complying to the treatment plan that was developed for this person? Then if the person has to abscond, as an example, decides to run away, they don't want to participate in the treatment process anymore, we then have a legal obligation to report that back to court and say that this person is now in reality in contempt of court. So where a court order would not really have a criminal aspect to it at the end, where there will be no criminal charges, if you're not complying with the court order, there is this element where the person can then be charged with contempt of court, and it can be a serious thing for that person. They must understand that this is a serious thing, and the center has a big responsibility in terms of taking this person on board on a court order, because it's not just, yeah, I've got someone now for the next 6 months, they must just sit in a corner. At the end of the day, the centre has an obligation to follow through on the treatment plan, make sure that the interventions that have been put in place are followed through on. The social worker meets regularly with the person goes to the counselling sessions, the person attends the group format, completes the educational programs. Everything that was prescribed needs to be followed through, and the centre needs to make sure that those things happen.
Can you tell me, when it comes to the patient and listening to all of these legal procedures, it can come across as a bit cold. Do they identify, or is there somebody that can relate to them in the sense that we're here to care for you? While hearing all of these legal terms, is there somebody to communicate that, listen, even though this sounds cold and harsh, we are actually here for you while this is in process? Is there somebody to do that at the centre?
Yeah, definitely. So every centre should have a social worker, and the social worker should be that sounding board, that comfort place to explain to the patient, listen, this is your social issue, and we are here to assist you through this process. You are not alone at the end of the day. We understand you don't necessarily want to be here. You're coming in as an involuntary service user, but that being said, you need help. And all of this has been done to get you to the understanding that you need to step out of the denial that you find yourself in and genuinely start working on bettering yourself, because you are causing harm to yourself. Everyone around you can see that what you are doing is not good for you, and we are here to assist you. Further than that, we can all see that what you are doing is causing harm to your family, to society, to a whole bunch of people. So there's definitely, even the people in the program, the counsellors, qualified addictions counsellors, qualified trauma counsellors, social workers, these are the types of people that will definitely be a sounding board to comfort and direct your thinking, to start changing the processes in your mind, to make good decisions. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, needs to be applied so that the person understands bad actions have bad consequences. So all of these things need to be taken into account. But the problem is it can sound cold, I agree with you, because there's a whole bunch of legal terms that are thrown around. Section 33 and Section 36, and you're going to be charged with contempt of court if you don't comply, and all of these terrible things. So as terrible as it sounds, we must understand that it's a very serious matter at the end of the day. It's about a person's life. Okay, it's not just that we're doing this because we don't have anything good to do with our time. The families didn't wake up one Saturday morning and say, oh yeah, I think let me put my child in rehab for 6 months, I'm tired of them at home. Someone genuinely had no more hope within themselves, and this is almost a last resort for them, right? So this is a serious intervention into someone's life, and even though it might sound cold for them, and initially they might even hate the process, it's at the end of the process where the person will see the benefit. Sometimes, because of the nature of addiction, in the midst of it, we might not necessarily always know what's good for ourselves. We're not in a state of mind that makes good decisions at that point in time. If we did make good decisions, we wouldn't be on drugs.
True. Let's go back to the treatment. What treatment is there that's available when it comes to the public and private sectors? Does a patient have the choice of which facility they'd rather go to?
Absolutely. I believe some people don't have a choice because of means. There are financial constraints in certain aspects, but that doesn't mean the situation is completely and utterly hopeless. There are government institutions that will be able to assist. They have waiting lists usually that you will just have to wait. So what you can do is you can just go to a social worker, your nearest social worker. At court there will always be a social worker. You can explain your circumstances to them, they can apply, and they will then, even through places like SANCA as well, they will then obviously put in an application and put you on a waiting list, and then it's a waiting game. So that's the public sector. So there is an answer. In the private sector, things go a little bit more quicker, but you have the choice to choose which recovery center you have to go to. The one thing I just need to remind everyone of is that a court order is a minimum 6 months and a maximum 12 months process. Some private centers only facilitate 21-day programs, 28-day programs, 3 months programs. So these people, once you contact them, you need to explain to them that on this court order, that person needs to be there for a minimum 6 months period, and they need to be able to facilitate that person for a 6 months period. So you will probably have to start looking for a long-term recovery center, which will then be able to house and facilitate a process of that nature. So yeah, I think there's a lot of answers and the person has the freedom to choose. I think do your research at the end of the day. If you have religious preferences, as an example, we understand there's faith-based modalities, there's medical modalities. If you have a religious preference and you want to go to a specific center, it's available to you. If you just want to focus on the clinical side of things, no problem, it's available to you. So at the end of the day, people have the freedom to choose. The only constraint is, I think, if the center you choose has to then have a long-term plan in order to facilitate the process of the court order. Otherwise, how are they going to facilitate someone for 6 months if the person can only be there for 21 days? So those are the only constraints.
And when we're talking about now issuing of a court order, for those that have committed crimes and they've been convicted, do you think that they would take advantage of the system, maybe abuse the justice system and use it as a get out of jail card?
Well, I think the nature of addiction is that addicted persons always abuse everything. It's not just that they abuse substances, they also abuse people and systems. So definitely there are people that are going to try and abuse this process. But again, that's the responsibility then of the justice system, the prosecutor and the magistrate that's facilitating an inquiry before this is even done through a Section 36 to determine whether or not this person would actually benefit from a treatment process. So a person that's committed a crime can't just say, I've got a drug problem, I need to rather go to rehab and get out of jail free card. There's still an inquiry that's held at court. The same way that a normal person that has never committed a crime first goes to an inquiry. It's under the Section 33 Act. And only after that person has then been identified as someone that does qualify as a person contemplated in Section 33 and is someone really that would benefit from treatment, that the court will then consider, okay, instead of giving this person a jail sentence, that we are giving them a sentence in a rehabilitation center, and that usually starts off on a 12-month minimum. I don't think they consider 6 months processes for that. But it is possible that people might want to take advantage of it, but again, the legal system between the magistrate and the prosecutor are there to already safeguard society, to say, we're not going to allow people to just take advantage. We're going to follow due process, make sure that this person is interviewed, social workers' reports are conducted, this person is assessed and interviewed, an inquiry is held in terms of the section, and only if this person genuinely qualifies will we consider giving this person rehabilitation instead of a jail sentence. They did commit a crime at the end of the day.
Yes, that's true. And lastly, what we'd like to know is how are the centers or the recovery centers funded?
So that's 3 ways. Firstly, there's government funding. Like I mentioned earlier, there are government institutions which are completely and utterly funded by government. So those are for the people that cannot afford. Like I said earlier, there are just long waiting lists. Those are some of the first issues that we find. Secondly, there are private institutions that will help anyone that has enough money to afford their fees. So there are centers that can charge anywhere between 6,000 Rand a month and 110,000 Rand a month. If you can afford any of these things, those centers will help. And then lastly, medical fees also do cover registered facilities with the Department of Health that have their own practice numbers and they do facilitate medical aids. So there are a lot of ways that this can be funded and facilitated, but mostly I think the bulk of the people are actually privately funded. And that's probably where the answer would have to start. At the end of the day, we always say we don't have money for rehab. That's one of the things that a lot of families say. I always ask this question: if your loved one has to die through their addiction, right? Are you going to bury that person? Well, the answer should obviously be yes. And I don't know if anyone's done research, but a funeral costs money, anywhere between 15 and 35,000 Rand for an entry-level funeral. So you can find the money to bury the person, but you can't find the money to keep a person alive. And I think if you really look for the money to help a person, you would find it. At the end of the day, it's a person's life again, like we've mentioned over and over and over again. We're not trying to make money. We're trying to help people, and unfortunately, that costs money. Even cancer treatment costs money. In an ideal situation, obviously, treatment would be free to everyone. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So there is definitely a situation where I think between the private sector and the public sector, a gap has to be breached and overcome. But at this point in time, there are definitely solutions for everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Donovan, for coming through. A big thank you to the Recovery Center of Tetelestai and the team that is there. They're doing a fabulous job. We've only heard good reports, and we hope that you continue your wonderful work.
Thank you so much for having us.
Drug and alcohol addiction does not discriminate, affecting people of all ages and all walks of life. Today, you've heard the various options and the ways in which the law can assist your loved ones in getting the treatment that they need. Should you require any more information, do not hesitate to contact ARCA. Their details are at the bottom of the screen. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at African Essence TV Show. Thank you, God bless, and stay safe.